Gunfire, screaming panic. A massive army, tens of thousands strong, locked in a desperate nighttime battle. Except look closely. There's no enemy in these shots. No opposing uniforms, no return fire from a visible line. Because there isn't one. Not tonight. This is the Austrian army. They are at war with themselves. By the time the sun comes up, this army will have suffered a staggering number of casualties, and not a single enemy soldier will have been anywhere near the battlefield. Let's find out how an army defeats itself. It's 1788. Emperor Joseph II of the Habsburg monarchy joins Russia in a war against the Ottoman Empire. Here's the part that matters for tonight's disaster. The Austrian army isn't one cohesive single-language fighting force. It's a patchwork. Regiments drawn from across the empire's territories speaking German, Hungarian, Czech, Serbian, Romanian, and more. Held together by a command structure that assumes everyone can understand the orders being shouted at them. They mostly can't. The army is marching toward the town of Karansebes in modern-day Romania to link up with the rest of the imperial force before engaging the Ottomans properly. An advanced cavalry detachment crosses a river ahead of the main army to scout the area. Along the way, they run into a group of merchants selling alcohol. And because this is still technically a military campaign and not a party, the cavalry does the responsible thing. They buy a large quantity of it to celebrate in the field, the night before a war. The cavalry settles in and gets thoroughly, seriously drunk. Not a polite toast. A full field celebration, hours before the rest of the army is expected to arrive. And then the rest of the army arrives. Infantry units reach the same crossing point later that evening. See the cavalry mid-celebration and, reasonably, ask to share in the alcohol. The cavalry says no. The dispute escalates. Accounts vary on exactly how, but somewhere in the argument, a shot is fired. One shot. That's all it takes. Because here's the thing about a massive multilingual army spread out across a dark riverside in the middle of the night. Nobody can clearly see who fired, why, or at what. And in an army where half the units can't understand the other half's shouted explanations, a single unexplained gunshot in the dark has exactly one universally understood interpretation. We're under attack. Word spreads instantly and badly. Officers start shouting orders in German to units that don't speak German. To those soldiers, panicked and half asleep in pitch darkness, unfamiliar shouted commands sound like exactly one thing. Enemy battle cries. Units start firing at anything that moves in any direction because in their understanding, the enemy is already inside the camp. Other units, hearing gunfire and shouting nearby, assume the same thing and open fire themselves at whoever's shooting near them, which is overwhelmingly other Austrian soldiers. Some units, convinced they're being overrun, break and flee. Other units, seeing large groups of soldiers running toward them in the dark, assume it's an enemy cavalry charge and fire on their own retreating comrades. By some accounts, even artillery gets involved, firing blind into the dark at what gunners believed was an advancing enemy force. The camp descends into total, sustained chaos. An entire army fighting an entire army that happens to be itself. By the time the sun rises, the chaos finally subsides, and the battlefield is empty of the enemy. It was empty the entire night. The exact casualty figures from Karansebes are disputed. Accounts vary significantly, and some modern historians question just how dramatic the numbers really were. But even the more conservative estimates describe a serious military disaster, entirely self-inflicted. An army that hadn't yet fired a single shot at an actual enemy had already suffered one of the worst nights of the entire campaign. 2 days later, the actual Ottoman army arrives at Karansebes and finds it essentially undefended. What was supposed to be a fortified strongpoint in the Austrian campaign is instead a town recovering from a battle its own defenders lost to themselves. The enemy didn't need to win this engagement. The Austrian army had already lost it days in advance to a language barrier and a bottle of alcohol. This wasn't really about one drunken argument getting out of hand. It's what happens when a massive institution scales up without the basic infrastructure needed to hold it together under pressure. No shared language across units. No reliable way to verify information in the chaos. No clear chain of command that could actually reach every soldier fast enough to stop a false alarm from spiraling. Karansebes wasn't a battle the Austrians lost. It was a battle they were never actually equipped to survive holding together. And it only took one confused, panicked knight to prove it. So that's the Battle of Karánsebes, an army tens of thousands strong that suffered a devastating defeat in a battle where the only enemy present was itself. The Ottoman Empire didn't defeat the Austrian army that night. The Austrian army had already done that job for them. So that happened. And the bad news is that's not even close to the dumbest thing humans have done with power, alcohol, or zero adult supervision. The worst news, I've got centuries of this on every continent involving basically every kind of army, government, and terrible decision available to humanity. So if you want front row seats to humanity repeatedly failing upward, hit subscribe. It's free. No alcohol required. Smash the like button. And send this to one friend who deserves to know an army once lost a war to itself. See you next time.